Hi, welcome to VERSED Podcast, powered by VIUM Capital, where you'll be hearing from leaders all across the long-term care sector who are shaping the future of our profession. Through these discussions, it's our hope that you will be even more well-versed as you tackle your day in seniors housing and healthcare. I'm your host, Scott Tittle, and this is VERSED. Hey everyone, this is Scott Tittle with VIUM Capital. I'd like to welcome you to this episode of our VIUM VERSED podcast. I'm really excited to talk to our guest today, Joel Theisen, who is the founder and CEO of Lifespark, located in St. Louis Park, Minnesota. Joel, welcome to our podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Scott. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, hey, you and I could talk about all kinds of things today, and we've talked for hours, but I want to get into some really exciting announcements you had recently as a company. And I know you're excited to talk about it too, but hey, before we get started, the name of your company is so intriguing to me, and it sounds very intentional. Tell us, our listeners, a little bit about, you founded the company about 20 years ago. Who do you serve? How do you serve them? And then maybe back into the name Lifespark, because I have a feeling that probably runs through not only you as a leader, but all of your teammates and all the people you serve. So say a little bit about all those points there.
I'm a nurse by background. I've been working with seniors for 30 years. I did a public company with my in-laws. I did a for-profit venture startup in the 90s, right, with a lot of capital. And then this company was kind of my holy grail. So when we started, Scott, 20 years ago in Minnesota here, the original name actually was Age Well, right? So we had the Age Well, and it was great. We built some great brand around it, and we liked it. And then we're like, you know what? This isn't enough. It's not enough, man. We had to do more than just age well. We want to spark lives. And so what really drove that was the client experience, right? When you see seniors that have this really awesome kind of like life cycle, and you're attracted to them, usually it's that glitter in their eye, regardless of age. And so the intentionality was, hey, that's what we want to do. Our why is to help people really spark, like to bring that not only for those that we serve, but for the employees too, right? Because you know what a big deal that is. We all want to have matter and meaning in our work. And so it was intentional. So thanks for asking. And we've really loved bleeding purple. We use a lot of brand around it. We have the purple bus, and we spark, and we everything that we try to have fun with in our language around our culture is based on that. So thanks for asking, and that's why.
At your core, you're a home care company, but I know you've got a lot of different services under your umbrella. We met many years ago because you partnered up with one of my favorite people in the world, one of my mentors, Howie Groff from Tealwood, and you've got the Tealwood flag underneath your portfolio too. But tell our listeners a little bit about how you serve all the people you serve and what through what business lines.
Yeah, historically, right? I mean, before there was any value-based, because I know that's part of it. We were doing things that we needed to do to be a valuable partner in senior services, right? In the home community base, right? So we did the home services, home health, private duty, geriatric care coordination, et cetera, for a bunch of years. And quite frankly, I never really liked being the home care, get put in the home care box, Scott, because I always thought more about the holistic longitudinal perspective of these seniors, because we get so isolated and hyper segmented in our own business units and business lines. Yep. And so I was always this guy that was like kind of bucking the current to say, look, I don't want to just build one thing. I want to really create the experience around the customer, not around my business case or my environment or my building or my thesis, right? So that over time, as we saw what happened with Affordable Care Act and Obamacare, and then ultimately what spun out of CMS and CMMI with alternative payment opportunities, I got super excited. And that's when we doubled down and tripled down on bringing in our own medical plan and bringing in, hospice and palliation, and then putting it all together and around the client, right? So that's really the thesis of Lifespark. It started out obviously with humble beginnings and getting things that were revenue based and that were giving us opportunity to understand seniors' perspective and lifestyle from home and community always. And then we transitioned that into how do we bring it all together in what we call Lifespark Complete. And that's really what Lifespark's all about now, is to be that end-to-end delivery system. So that's really the story. And we've now been really fortunate and successful. And we have through that Lifespark Complete, through our whole cadre of different service arms and parts, we have about 30,000 seniors that we service every day.
Yeah. And those all in the Minnesota market, or are you in the surrounding states as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're primarily in Minnesota, although back to you mentioned, I love Howie Groff. He's awesome. Tealwood, when we did that acquisition a number of years ago, they had some properties in Wisconsin that we took over as well. So we have some senior housing. Another piece of our business is senior housing. That's very important to us because we want to service people end to end in senior housing. And so we have 7 properties in Wisconsin out of our 51, and about 44 in the state of Minnesota, Scott.
Well, I want to get into an exciting announcement you just had more recently, but before I get there, I've had a chance to meet some of your senior team over the years, and they're all just so excited to work for you and work for your company and to serve seniors. And I think it's because you're such an incredible leader, Joel. And I know you've got some great phrases where you think about your growth mindset and your business mindset, failing forward and slowing down and getting clear. Tell our listeners about what those phrases mean to you, how
Yeah.
you use those as a leader, as you think about how you built out your company. And so say a little about, I know failing forward, obviously, I don't know if that's referenced the great John Maxwell book, but say a little about those two phrases, failing forward and slowing down and getting clear.
Yeah, I'll take them piece by piece and then put them together, right? So you're right. I mean, none of these are new phrases, right? But you kind of, when you're young and you're learning from a lot of other people, you want to kind of live by certain things, right? And really, when I think about failing forward, when you think about the kind of company that I want to create and that a lot of us like to create is really transformation, not iterative, right? It's full transformation. I didn't want to like just did a little bit better. I didn't want to do a Kaizen. I want to really crush it. And so when you think about having to do that work, like anything that's great, right? You go through a lot of like fast fails, right? And you've got to be okay with failing, because if you're not, you'll never take the risks big enough to transform. You'll just be iterative. And I didn't want to be iterative. So that whole failing forward is like, listen, man, our culture is like, you got to put yourself out there, man. You might get banged up, you might get bruised up, but just get back up, right? And so failing forward is that age-old statement. People have used it for lots of times, but for us culturally, we talk a lot about it because we have to be okay and not bulldog people for failing, right? And we don't want to fail time and time again, as you know, right? But we want to fail forward. And that learning is what really creates the opportunity to truly make a huge impact. And that's what Lifespark's all about, is huge impact. And so you just got to have that mindset, right? Any great entrepreneur will tell you that. Any great entrepreneurial book will give you that kind of like that phrasing. And, I guess I'm more of a student than anything in that regard. As it relates to the other phrase, slowing down to get clear, as you could probably tell already, I'm definitely a guy that likes to move fast. I talk fast, I think fast, and I've kind of had to be this guy that had to like learn how to put a turtle shell on, right? Because I'm the hare and I like to run fast, but I'm needed to put that turtle shell on me, because obviously you can get your bell rung really fast in some of the risk taking, and if you don't slow down, right? Just like it can do for a second right now, slow down and get clear. You miss, the old adage again, we're using metaphors now, but using you miss the forest through the trees, right? So you start to miss what's really most important. And I think a lot of people, and a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of companies, they get really focused on their business case or their environment or economic model. And they forget what the heck they're all about, right? They forget their why, and they forget to slow down and say, wait, what are we really doing here? And so for me, from a culture standpoint and from a personal standpoint, the best thing I can do, and Dr. Bill Thomas actually gave me that one a long time ago, was to really kind of breathe, right? Breathe, slow down, make damn sure you're clear about why you're doing what you're doing. And that's what it means to us. And we use it in our culture, we use it in how we operate. And that shows up in a lot of different ways operationally.
I love your encouragement of your teammates to not be afraid to fail, right? And I love that phrase, we're either winning or we're learning, right? And I think that's a really positive perspective, and that's the way we're going to be moving forward. And you've got, important things you're doing. You're taking care of seniors, taking care of employees. And so I think that's, I love your business model strategy and that mindset, Joel. That's awesome. Well, hey, let's just jump right into this exciting announcement you had more recently about launching this emergency response services program, and say you obviously at some point saw that there was a real need to serve, and what was the problem you were trying to serve there, and maybe tell us a little bit about the service, the emergency response services program itself, and how it works.
So just a quick bit of context, right? So historically, what LifeSpark built in this end-to-end, what we wanted to be is proactive, predictive, prescriptive, right? That's the whole value-based thesis, right? Is you want to be out front, you want to avoid catastrophic failure or roller coaster kind of running. And so we built a lot of things around a single point of contact, geriatric medicine, and geriatric expertise, and using data and insights to help us make better actions and trajectory change around those clients, right? So that was great, and we had that. But what the data showed us, Scott, and why we call it urgent response, right? We call it urgent response, or you can call it emergent response. But what we did is we said, as we were looking at our thesis, and we have full risk, right? So we have full global risk on these populations. So we have to be accountable for their hospital stays, their SNF stays, their home stays. Everything is under our umbrella. So as we looked at the data, we saw that every time, and this is not rocket science to everybody out there, the most dangerous place to be and the most expensive place to be is where? In the hospital, right? So you don't want people in the hospital because they don't want to be there either, right? Nobody wants to be in acute care. So we said, look, we've got this great thesis on proactive, predictive, but we still fail, right? Because these are complex seniors. So they still get into the hospital, in the EMS system. And we looked at really good companies out there like Medically Home and Dispatch. And there's other companies that do hospital at home and acute care at home. And we partner with them a little bit too. But the problem that we said is, look, we got to create an end to end. We gotta solve for that problem where we can't let go of their hand. We don't want to let them, once they get into that spin cycle, we didn't want to let go of their hand and let the system chew them up and have 50 new services and spend and mess it all up. And that's what the data was showing us. So we said, look, we got to solve that. We've got physicians, we've got NPs, we've got triage, we've got nurses, we've got home community. Let's just build this. And so that's really was the impetus, Scott, to say, look, we have a first line of defense in our proactive, predictive, prescriptive. And now Lifespark has a second line of defense saying, listen, if we fail and the goalie, if we miss the shot, we're right there. We level on triage. We get in, we'll go out to their home. We'll hit them with telehealth, or even in the worst cases, if they do end up in an ambulance ride and they end up in the ER, our people are actually going to the ER and leveling them out of the ER, because no hospital either wants them in an observation stay or a short stay that's not proper. And so because we have all the history of these people, we know who they are, we know their medical record, we have all their history, we can be so much more beneficial for that client, that family, to keep them even from going into a hospital or getting out of the hospital very quickly and getting them back to their senior housing or to their house. So long answer there, but that's why we did what we did, and super excited about it.
So essentially you become the ER at home. So x-rays, EKGs, suturing, surgery. I mean, what can't you do in someone's home or community?
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, this is a relatively new service for us, Scott, so I'll be a little careful here. We've been giving fluids, we've been doing triple lines, we've been doing a lot in the home already, right? So I guess what you can't do, obviously, is when somebody has a myocardial infarction, right? I mean, you're not going to mess with that. So that's in our leveling and our triage. We want them. Obviously, a hospital is a great place for emergent, serious, intervention. And then obviously the other thing that we don't do is we don't do surgeries, right? So other than that, though, there's the technology, as you're well aware of, and everybody out there on this call, there's a lot we can do as long as it's coordinated and orchestrated through a truly bona fide medical delivery system, right? And so it's pretty cool. And having the preventive side and the reactive acute side, usually people build one or the other, right? They have this thesis, but tying it with the client, again, I always want to put that client in the middle, Scott, because when you know that person, you have that trust, you can architect and obviously navigate those right solutions so much more effectively.
Yeah, and I imagine there's some real strong emotional, positive energy components to this, right? Where the senior and the families know that you already know them, you already got their records, right? You're kind of removing that unnecessary transport to a hospital, kind of reducing stress, and they know you know them. But maybe say about the data points too. What exactly will you be measuring going forward, and to determine, how do you define success here?
Great question. The obvious ones, right, are ED and inpatient avoidance, right? That's obvious, right? Those are normal and those are highly tracked through every system, right? And then some of the other ones that we're looking at, right, is, because we're at full risk, so we have all that claims data. So MLR reduction is part of that. That's why people want that, is medical loss ratio or medical spend, right? To make it, for those of you that don't know those acronyms, sorry for throwing acronyms out there. But really what the other cool parts are, Scott, that we track is we track the net promoter score and the client experience as well. Because what we've already found, which I didn't expect this much of an uptick, is that the families and the clients, now that we're starting to roll this out aggressively, they're like, oh my God, like I don't have to take mom to the urgent care. And she waited 6 hours last time. And we couldn't even, I mean, it's like the families and the clients, like I didn't think it was going to be a marketing thing, right? Or a benefit to the ecosystem of being in our global, kind of our complete senior health model. But the families and the clients just are sick and tired of getting beaten and thrashed in these poor options that they have around urgent and emergent services.
And if I heard you correctly, in the event that someone does need to go to the hospital, you've got a teammate with them also, right? So imagine that transition to care is so much more fluid. You've got somebody speaking the language, with the ER staff right there, and it's not a new conversation. So I imagine that's got to be an incredible experience too, but family members that had to do that on their own, right?
See, you're helping me out, Scott, right? You're connecting all the dots, right? See, that's what people don't do, and what people call healthcare. I don't even call it healthcare. I call it health, because I want to get paid to keep people healthy, right? And I want to keep them out of harm's way. That's all of our jobs. I'm a clinician myself, right? And we forget that, doing more stuff isn't better, right? And
Mhm.
so I think that, tying those two things together, I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I know there's a lot of companies that are, from a home and community standpoint, trying to tie this together. I think we're the only one that have tied it together ourselves, right? I mean, people are using other services and multiple different, partners, which is great, right? I love it.
Mhm.
But your point that I'm making and why I wanted to double back on is the difference is the data and the information in that what we call electronic life record, not another medical. We have 5 medical records, right? We have 5 EMRs inside of Lifespark because of our different service lines, right?
Mhm.
But by tying all that information, we know Betty, we know Bob, we know what the hell's going on. We truly have their pulse. We know what they want. We know what their family wants. It's all been negotiated. So that experience for them of fear, uncertainty, anxiety, right? Much of that goes away, right? Even if we meet them in the ER because we have prompt system Minnesota, so we get immediate response for when
Mhm.
somebody hits the ER if it's one of our members. Even if the client doesn't call us first, which we want them to call us first, but even if they don't, we can mobilize, right? Because we have
Yeah.
that dispatch system. You're exactly right, that synergy, again, it's not rocket science. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I'm really driven, and tying the whole thesis together. Most providers don't do it. It's very hyper segmented.
Well, Joel, I'm going to give you credit. You are one of the smartest guys in the room, and especially there's only two of us here. But anyone listens here, but I'll tell you. But the reason why I wanted to tee up your business mindset early on about failing forward and slowing down, getting clear, is because one for our listeners to understand. In order to put something like this together, I have to believe you had a slow moment and a moment of clarity. We thought we got to do this. Our clients need it. Our families need it. Our staff desires it. We can do this. And I just thanks for taking this leap and doing it. I know that this is still relatively new, but kind of what's next for the program? Are you looking at other populations you may serve, other communities? I mean, other partnerships? I mean, again, I think you just launched this at the end of June, right? So
Right.
formally, but say
Right.
what's already next on your whiteboard? What's coming next?
Yeah, that's a great question too. And I've been, because we've been running fast and putting a lot of things together under our complete, obviously the urgent response is a part of that, Scott, that you're talking about, but it's really a lot of the other stuff too, right? It's having really an awesome experience with what we call life managers and nurse practitioners and physicians out in the home, being proactive, being predictive, getting those insights, avoiding hospital stays, improving outcomes, helping them palliate when it's appropriate versus restorative care, getting the quality right, getting, as everybody knows, the diagnostic accuracy right. I mean, those things that take a lot of effort and energy. This urgent response was, to me, what I'm calling inside our team, how I'm talking about it internally, is that it's kind of the last brick in the house, right?
Mhm.
When you talk about the complexity of what we've built, it takes a lot of commitment, right? Because everybody wants a quick fix or quick solution or a very focused, very simple business case to take to the venture world and get money and then sell it to UHC or something. I mean, everybody likes those quick and
Yeah.
fast, solutions. This one's been a long time to build and a lot of complexity, and trying to make it simple has been the key. So to answer your question, where I'm at and where Lifespark's at is, like, we're really excited about like full execution now, and really working with our payer partners
Hmm.
to deliver on the thesis, because it's still not 100% always clear, right? Because there's a lot that goes into full stack MLR risks. So for us, I don't want to try to build. We've got a lot of architecture and a lot of pieces, as you know already. So mine is more about continue to integrate and continue to build the culture around execution
Hmm.
and really, really knock that out of the park. So then we can truly bona fide kind of be a thought leader in the space and help others and just really help this proliferate for more seniors all over the country. And that's really the goal. We're going to obviously have opportunities to scale, and we have ideas on that. But because we have Blue Cross Blue Shield in Minnesota and UCare in our cap table that are pushing
Hmm.
lives our way and want to push more, I mean, I don't have a marketing or biz dev problem.
Yeah.
I have an execution issue, not problem, but opportunity, right?
The
To
focus. Yeah.
demonstrate and scale. So
Hmm.
that's kind of where we're at. I've done enough of the kind of like the look at the pretty birds, and like I've seen them all and I've grabbed as many as I can, but now it's like, let's just like really take care of them and put them into a really tight, thoughtful delivery system that really cracks the code on senior health around the country.
Yeah, and maybe just a pinpoint question on, you mentioned infrastructure or architecture. So say a little about workforce, because I know that's been a real challenge for really everyone around the country in the sector,
Right.
regardless of kind of the component that you serve in senior housing and long-term care. But have you had challenges kind of bringing people in your fold? What kind of staffing model you need to kind of put in behind your urgent response services? I mean, say a little about your staffing challenges
Yeah.
and how those you've met them.
Yeah, I love that question because that's everybody talks about it, as you know, especially post-COVID and everything. It's been brutal, right? There's two answers to it, and I'll give you be completely transparent, right? I mean, what's awesome about Lifespark is that we've always been about culture first, right? And some of the things that why I think I'm on here, right, is because I'm pretty passionate and I really care about the delivery system and I care about what we ultimately do. So I think, part of our challenge, right, is mitigated by the fact that people want to come to Lifespark, right? People want to be there. And why? Because they get three things. They learn a lot, right? Because it's transformative. They can make a lot of money because we give a lot of equity to our people because we want them to be part of the entrepreneurial spirit and we give them incentives in different ways. So incentives are important. So that's great. So you learn a lot, you make a lot, and you have fun, right? Those are the three things in any perfect job. If you can get those three things, you stay, right?
Yeah.
If you have fun and you learn a lot and you make a lot, that's great. Usually you get two or three of those, two of three or one of three in most jobs. So at Lifespark, we always focus on making sure we can balance those three, Scott. And by balancing those three, we have a really good inflow. We've had 18 times we've been the top workplace in Minnesota. We win lots of awards and things, right, that are third party validated. We do a lot of internal net promoter scores on our employees. We're even kicking off now an employee life planning process. So all of our employees, not only are they getting their KPIs and their individual plans, but we're working on them on how do they think about their life and what matters to them beyond Lifespark. And we're working to make sure we document and we support them as leaders. So
Mhm.
a lot of things, Scott, it's not a silver bullet. But how I see workforce is it's going to be even more of a challenge, as we all know, going forward. It's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. And so he or she or those that really have a culture that is like a magnet are going to win big. And so we are always working on the magnetization of our brand. With that said, some of our different parts of our business, like when we think about home care or think about housing, I mean, do we have turnover? Sure, we do, right? I mean, my gosh, we have turnover, but it's always, it's kind of like we're the cream of the crop, right? I mean, turnover is turnover, but we are like 50% of what the market is. So I would just say, like, what really matters, and if I could profess anything to people out there, is you've got to really get those three ingredients right. You got to invest in culture like constantly, and you got to create a business case that's, especially in this new world, that has to have humanity to it. It has to have what's the good that you're doing in the world. And if people don't see that, they are just like fleeting in every opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I think for our listeners, they can all tell why I want to have you on today, Joel. Just want to hear your story, hear your passion for serving seniors and this really new and innovative way you're doing with their urgent response services. So what I'd love to do is have you on maybe about a year from now and just kind of hear how things are going and get an update if that's all right. We'd love to hear about your progress and your journey. It'd be really exciting.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. This is a
Yeah.
lot of fun, and I'm a huge positive energy force for those that are doing home community. I don't care. I'm not about competitive. I mean, yes, we have competition, but I want everybody to win. I want home community to win, Scott. I know you guys
Yeah.
work. I know a lot of people on this call are from home community and housing. Man, I want everybody out there to get after it, right? Because that's where population health and value-based work should happen, in my opinion. It should come from acute care down. I'm not anti-acute care, but
Yeah.
my point is the people on this call are the people that need to drive the change. And so really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and
Yeah.
hopefully some of those listeners out there and would love to come back in a year and share.
Yeah, and hey, before we close, I got two fun questions for you, just personal. One I always ask all our guests, but one in particular I read, this would not surprise our listeners now, knowing you for about 20 minutes. You're got a lot of energy, and I think you love just being outside and competing. Did I read that you do Ironman races, and you actually then maybe have a goal for not only just completing them and surviving them, but maybe even placing it, pretty high in your age group? Say a little bit about that, and maybe about
Yeah.
a more recent race you had.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, right? I'm just kind of that's my stress relievers, right? Because we all work super hard. So I do a lot of stuff. Scott, yes, Ironmans I do. I did the Boston Marathon. I placed real well there. I've done, Ironmans and things like that. And I do really like to be competitive at a high level and push myself. It's not so much about the competition, but I really like to get everything I can and put myself to the limit. It's kind of like when you have the possibility, then you need to, take the responsibility to perform, right? And so that's
Yeah.
just a personal conviction of mine. I
Yeah.
race cars also, and I do a bunch of other crazy stuff. But but I do really like the headiness and the grind of endurance sports. And the reason I do is kind of like in business. I want to be back to that turtle. It's
Mhm.
not a sprint, it's a marathon to do this kind of work. And it helps me really both walk my own talk from a physical standpoint, which is obviously affects your mental standpoint, and they're so tied together for me. So if I'm not doing that, I'm not feeling the right kind of personal dopamine in my brain, and I'm not
Yeah.
feeling the energy that I need to do other transformative work. So thanks for asking. And yeah, I
Yeah.
have a lot of fun with people around those types of things. And again, it's really is about, walking your talk.
Lee, one more question I always ask our listeners, kind of what's on your nightstand? Is there a book you're reading right now or a book you'd like to recommend to people, a book you give to your staff or your teammates? What's kind of maybe a leave behind for our listeners they may want to pick up?
I've been around for a while, so some of my favorite books are some of the older books, right? I love Good to Great. I love Built to Last. I love those books from a business standpoint. I also like a lot of adventure books, as you can imagine, right? I like Krakauer. I like Into Thin Air and Into the Wild. Those kind of books. Those are some of my favorite books. And then my final one is kind of maybe a controversial one a little bit for some people out there, but I'll just say it anyway because I don't really care, right? I'll tell you how it is. I like the book called Atlas Shrugged. It's an
Yeah.
older book. It was written a long time ago. I like it because it presses accountability and it presses performance, right? And
Yeah.
so I want everybody in my community to want to be together and win together. And that's kind of just the MO of my kind of how I operate. So those are
Yeah.
some meaningful books to me and some things that are on my nightstand and things that I refer back to occasionally. And so thanks
Yeah.
for asking.
Yeah. Every once in a while you'll see the line, "Who is John Galt?" Right? So you gotta, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you've
That's
read
a
it.
that's a great
So
one. Yeah.
yeah, it
Well,
is.
Joel, hey, thanks for being on today. I really enjoyed this conversation. I know we're going to see each other through conferences throughout the next part of this second half of this year at some point. Love to be up in Minnesota and see you in person at some point, but I'd love to be back on the podcast. I know for our listeners, they're really excited about what you're doing there and how you're serving seniors in a passionate way and families and residents, and love to hear how things are going. So maybe we kind of put some on the calendar for about a year from now and have you back on as a guest.
Thanks again, Scott. You're really great to talk to, and thanks for the great questions, and really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. Hey, and for our listeners, thanks for tuning in. This is Versed.